All right. Okay. So, Dr. Florence, can you say some words before we start? But let me say a few words about yourself. She's a Kenyan lady, very agile lady, as you can see. She has interest in interfaith relations, issues of conflict, and she has been working with faith communities in sub-Saharan Africa for the past 10 years. Her PhD focused on women participation in Christian-Muslim dialogue in Kenya, and she is a faculty member of the KAG East University in Kenya. So we are very delighted to welcome Dr. Florence Iminza to moderate this evening session. So please, the floor is yours. Say a few words, and then I think we can take some interactive session where we see if the speaker will join us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Bright Nwaru. I am very privileged and happy to be able to join this sixth series of the science seminar that we have for this particular month. I am particularly aware that the topic that we are having ahead of us is the topic that really concerns us as researchers and scientists in Africa. And looking at it more closely, quenching fires, quenching the fires in the continent has been the task that really is ahead, and it should concern literally every person who really is looking forward to developing our continent. I looked at it and said, looking at the role of mediation and looking at the conflict resolution, looking at regional integration as particularly ways in which we can be able to look at our continent and imagine that we can be able to quench the conflicts that are within us. If we are talking about the conflicts that are connected with ethnicity, conflicts that are connected to resource sharing, conflicts that are connected with our faith, are really eating up our continent. And so when we talk about quenching the fires in terms of this particular topic this evening, it is something that I'm looking forward to, and I am hoping that all the participants would be able to find this a very, very insightful and very resourceful topic. I personally have been concerned about the Christian-Muslim relations in Africa, and looking at it and working with the African faith communities in the sub-Saharan Africa, it has been a very, very delicate space, to say so, looking at how Christians and Muslims particularly are struggling to be able to coexist, to live in ways that they can be able to accept one another and understand one another. So part of the struggles that we are having within the continent have been strongly related to the faith communities, and particularly trying to work in ways that would help us to live peacefully, and looking at also the continent being strongly taking up the two faiths of Islam and Christianity, and working in ways that will be able to help these two communities be able to coexist peacefully. So I look forward to quenching the fires using the role of mediation, conflict resolution, and regional integration, so that we see how can we minimize, how can we be able to work through integration, looking at even the platforms that we have, that we are getting even from the ASFI community, to see that we can be able to coexist, to work in ways that conflicts are minimized, and we are trying to develop our continent in ways that we can cope, we can be able to live up to the needs of our own people. So Prof, I am very much excited to be here and to be able to work around this particular area. Hopefully that we will be able to also find a way in which we can work in collaboration, do some networking in terms of integrating and working from different perspectives within the continent to see to it that we are able to forge forward in terms of minimizing, quenching the fires of conflict within our own continent.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Iminza. I think we can kickstart the discussion. Still waiting for the speaker. Quenching the fires. I would like us to discuss now, and then after some time, I will send us to breakout rooms. I will tell you what you should do. But now we are talking about the quenching the fires. And the fires we're talking about here are the fires of conflict that exist in our territorial region as a continent. Some of these fires are international, some are national, some are ethnic, some are religious, some are gender-based, and so on and so forth. So quenching the fires. All right, so the speaker is here. All right, speaker is here, and so let me shut up for now and let him speak, because I will continue to speak as an amateur, the expert we have. All right, so Prof, you're welcome. We have been waiting and we wanted to start some discussion while you finally join. Let me hand over to Dr. Iminza to introduce the speaker proper, and then we will take it from there. Welcome, Prof.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We are privileged today to have our speaker. Our speaker is Professor James Kewir. Professor Kewir is a professor of conflict mediation and regional integration and research hub leader for the African Leadership Center in Nairobi, and head of research and cooperation at the Faculty of Law and Political Science at the University of Bweya. He is also an adjunct faculty at the School of Global Affairs and the Pan-African University Institution for Governance, Humanities and Social Sciences in Yaoundé. He holds a master's, an MA in Peace and Reconciliation Studies from the Center for Peace and Reconciliation Studies in Coventry University in the UK, and a PhD in Political Science from the University of Yaoundé. Professor Kiven has served as a reviewer for several international journals and led several innovative research projects in the area of conflict prevention. He enjoys reading and writing, playing tennis and jogging. So this particular time, we are so pleased to have you, Professor Kewir. Professor, how are you this evening?
Dr. Iminza, it's a real pleasure to actually see you and to listen to you. It's a real honor for me to have been invited by ASFI, extending my gratitude here to Prof. Nwaru and his team, his wonderful team at Nwaru, for the initiative that they have, because when that was extended this invitation and I looked at the website of ASFI, I was pleasantly surprised that an African organization led by Africans had taken on this noble initiative, because I'm one of those that has been very concerned about the failing standards and the falling standards of our research, scientific research, the continuous decrease in the capacity, the number of people with capacity to carry out real scientific research on the continent, which clearly is the objective that ASFI has set for itself. So I'm really happy to be here, and thank you for that introduction, which makes me want to do justice to the introduction that you have made. My core activities and my core roles, which I don't remember anybody asked me about to send. So I'm really happy to meet everyone. Again, I want to also apologize for the delay in connecting. Actually, as Dr. Ajibola might tell you, I'd actually cross-checked the time we had about 2 hours before they start, just to make sure nothing happened. But unfortunately, technology is what it is. I don't yet know what exactly was happening, it just played its game at the time we were supposed to start. But I'm happy that it's finally given way for us to go ahead. And I hope it stays this way till the end.
Thank you so much. We are so happy to have you, and we are privileged actually to be having you talk about this particular topic. And without much ado, please allow me to usher you in to be able to help us, lead us through into our very, very exciting topic for today. Please feel welcome.
Thank you. Okay, so I would share my screen, please, so that you can see the PowerPoint. So I'll do that before I start. I hope you can see my screen.
Yeah, we see.
I hope my screen is visible to you now, to everyone now.
Yeah, if you can put it on presentation mode, Prof,
okay,
that would be great.
Thanks. So we, I mean, this is a topic. Oh, that's fine. Yeah. Okay, so topic, I was like, okay, this is normal coming from an organization like ASFI, because it's one of those things that really requires research on the continent, and for me particularly, it's an area that I hold very close at heart. So speaking on the role of mediation, conflict resolution, and regional integration in African development is not just timely, but is a very important area of research on the continent. How are we going to proceed with the presentation? Then we would move to discuss what regional integration and development mean, because we don't want to assume that we are all at page, or that we all have the same conception of all of these important concepts. Following that, we would want to look at how mediation and conflict resolution can contribute to development, and then how regional integration can contribute to development. Last but not least, we want to interrogate where we are with mediation, conflict resolution, and regional integration in Africa. Because if all of these perhaps are useful in terms of bringing about the much needed development, however we define it, I think we want to know where we are with all of these different concepts. Now, as an introduction, we can say that according to the African Union's Agenda 2063, Africa aspires to be developed by 2063. It aspires to be developed by 2063. The agenda spells out actions to be taken to implement the agenda, including political integration of Africa and silencing the guns. So we, as Africa, we do not only want to develop, but we are clear as far as how we want to what we need to do to actually achieve this development is concerned. As part of efforts to achieve political integration, the establishment of a continental free trade area and an African passport with regard to silencing the guns, the involvement of the African Union and REX in mediation and other conflict resolution efforts to prevent or address violent conflicts has been growing. So we have actually been seeing a lot of interest in regional integration, but also in mediation and conflict resolution as part of efforts to all in a bid to actually promote development in Africa. So what do mediation, conflict resolution, regional integration, and development mean to us as Africans? Mediation we can consider as a strategy of conflict resolution involving the facilitation of a third party that is perceived as neutral by the conflict parties who engage willingly in the process and are primarily responsible for implementing any agreement that is reached. So when we get into a mediation, the mind is that we have somebody who is going to, that we decided we will turn to, or that we will turn to somebody to facilitate us actually resolving our difference, our conflict with the other party. And that we do so willingly. So we are usually, we at least in mediation. What does this mean? It means that we are more likely to actually implement or adhere to any agreement that is a result of a mediation process. On the other hand, we can look at conflict resolution as an umbrella term that denotes the whole gamut of strategies that can be deployed to address the core causes of the conflict and enable parties to reach a shared solution that they perceive to be sustainable. So one of the ways to resolve conflict, to reach this shared solution, is to actually use mediation. And one thing that's very important with conflict resolution, which I'd like to emphasize, is the fact that you always aim to address the core causes of the conflict. Why core causes? Because we can actually resolve a conflict without addressing core causes, or we can deal with the conflict, let me not say resolve, we can deal with the conflict, like for instance, managing it without addressing the core causes. But what we've seen from the literature and from practice is that conflicts that are addressed in this kind of way always actually relapse, and so causing conflicts on the continent. Voluntary association of countries in a given geographic area with a view to address economic, political, environmental, or other common problems that they perceive cannot be better addressed independently. So we get into this, we get into the AU, we get into ECOWAS, we get into SADC and ACAS and all the different schemes that we actually see on the continent, because we believe as Africans that there are problems that as individual states, as individual communities, we cannot resolve on our own. And so we need integration to help us face these common challenges. Now, development, which is very central to this discussion today, perhaps more than the previous concepts, remains a highly contested term. One reason for this is that scholars and practitioners alike disagree on the purposes of development. Is development meant to create material wealth, for instance? Is the purpose of development high GDP figures? Is the objective of development having stable states? Is it about community cohesion or self-reliance? These are questions that we actually find burning in everyday discussions of development on the continent. And so we can say that in the early days of modern development, in the modern intellectual history of development, more attention was given to the question of how people could be used to help achieve industrialization. And so again, we see why these different kind of conceptions of development actually prevail. Because while initially we look at how people can be used to help achieve industrialization, this was done in place of or other than asking the question how industrialization can help people. So what do we use development for? Why do we pursue development? Is it to be able to use people to industrialize, or to actually industrialize so that people can actually see their lives improved? Right? So scholars such as Paulo Freire in this light, Denis Goulet, Ivan Illich, and Joan Galtung have consequently emphasized the non-material dimensions of development. To these scholars, ideas of liberation, ending domination and oppression are central to the development process. Freire sees raising the consciousness of people so that they come to respect themselves and believe in their ability and their right to bring about development. So to bring Africans in the terms to borrow from the terms of Freire, if our objective is to bring up Africans to the point where as Africans we respect ourselves and we believe in our ability and in our right to bring about change, the change that we desire in the world, not just in Africa in this case, but in the world, then that would be the task of development for us. It means that the transformation that is brought about by seeing themselves as victims to seeing themselves as being in control of their own worlds. And this is very, very important in defining development. For Africa to develop in the terms of Freire, we are saying that we need to see that point where Africans stop seeing themselves as victims. And this concretely means that the rhetoric has to change from we were enslaved, we were colonized, and so we need to be taken care of and all these kind of things. As long as the narrative doesn't change, as long as we are still seeing ourselves as victims of a world system that is designed to actually keep us behind, then it's going to be quite difficult for us to actually develop, to borrow Freire. To say the least, all these different conceptions are necessary for an understanding of development. So we cannot actually say that, well, the material conceptions of development are not important, they are not relevant for Africa, because of course, as Africans, we are all aware that African countries and people continue to seek material progress. And so we are saying we cannot actually say, well, development in Africa is going to be all about material development. It's going to be about GDP growth, because we do know that for several decades post-independence of pursuing this kind of development, there hasn't been any change as far as, to say the least, as far as eradicating poverty on the continent is concerned. I therefore conceive of development as the capacity of people and societies to determine and evolve social, cultural, economic, political, and environmental systems that they need. So in the light of all what we have actually seen, the African Union Constitutive Act, Agenda 2063, the ECOWAS Treaty, SADC Treaty, all the different sub-regional treaties that we have in the continent, we actually see clearly that Africans want to have a space where there is economic upliftment, where there's political maturity, where there is where they can actually with the rest of nature, having very sustainable environment and all that. So development for us would be the capacity, being able to determine, and to not just determine. We won't end at determining, but having the capacity to both determine and most especially perhaps to evolve the kind of systems that we actually need in Africa. A term is mentioned 8 times in the constitutive acts of the African Union, which I would refer to here subsequently as the Act. And one of the main objectives of the African Union or regional integration in Africa, in the light of Article 3 of the Act, is to advance the development of the continent by promoting research in all fields, in particular science and technology. And that this is again one of the reasons why I laud very much the initiative or the objectives of ASFI. Now, if we look at that as a reasonable way of conceiving of these concepts, these important concepts, we can then ask, how can mediation and conflict resolution contribute to development in Africa? The first, I'm going to make 4 points about this. And the first is that these can improve mediation and conflict resolution, can improve inclusion of conflict parties in decisions and policy making. Without mediation and conflict resolution, people from remote and neglected locations are often excluded from development programming. In spite of their location, they remain important stakeholders. It is thus difficult to envisage effective development programming without their participation. In many African countries, you don't see anything serious, or people do not believe that anything serious can come from the hinterland, can come from the countryside, can come from other regions outside of the national capital. And so when you're in Abuja, you see all these big mansions and everything. But then when you start going to Kaduna, when you start going to if you are not in Abuja and Lagos, you go to Jos, you go to Kaduna and other parts of Nigeria, you as the further you go from Abuja and Lagos, you see a contrast. The more you see a different kind of setting, and a setting which sometimes when you talk to people shows abandonment, neglect, and sometimes a feeling that these parts, people from these parts don't actually matter, or as far as issues of development of the country are concerned. And so when meetings are being held in Abuja, seldom would you hear that people from one community in Kaduna or Jos or other parts of Nigeria they were invited or consulted at some point, because they wouldn't understand development. The second point is that they would help to refocus the perspectives of national actors. These are government, civil society, and others, on long-term issues and sustainable projects rather than short-term interests and projects. Most often, because we do not engage in development from a mediation, with mediation and conflict resolution guiding us, and mediation and conflict resolution. Why? You want to ask me, but is development about conflict resolution and mediation? And I say yes. Almost every development effort will be fraught in conflict. How you mediate the conflicts that surround any idea of development, actually determines how successful you would be, and not just in actually finalizing that initiative, but especially implementing it. The next point we can make is that They help build confidence among stakeholders, including ordinary citizens, civil society, government, donors, and international organizations. When you actually mediate and engage development from a conflict resolution lens, or engage it from a conflict resolution lens, you actually are able to build the kind of confidence among all stakeholders that is necessary to ensure that they actively contribute to development program in their country, in their communities. Finally, we can say the development that is guided by mediation and conflict resolution helps to resolve or end conflict which has been demonstrated in the literature to determine regional integration to undermine regional integration and development in Africa. So, but you want to jump into it, taking into consideration the different views that exist in society. And you don't also want to embark on development when people are actually dying in a civil war, or when people are actually killing themselves on a day-to-day basis. When it's done in this way, we're saying that it then helps to ensure that the energy that is going to be put to develop the country, whether culturally, politically, or economically, is not sapped by the conflict. And so mediation and conflict resolution, as we are saying, are key to actually making this possible. Now, what then is the contribution that we can expect from regional integration? Regional integration can increase trust among African countries and states. It can, without when people meet and interact, like I've been blessed to meet so many people that I didn't know before today. It builds more trust between us.
Yeah, I think the speaker is having some challenges there. Let's see if he joins again.
Okay, so my video is also off.
Yeah, I put it off to help your bandwidth, because I see that the when you have the video, it's not
okay.
It's not working well. But yeah, you can speak without the video.
Okay.
To save your bandwidth. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think it's not really bandwidth, because it's something that seems to happen sometimes.
Okay.
It's not really bandwidth because I have unlimited bandwidth, but this is a problem that I've not really understood how it happens. But good to be back, and I hope everybody is seeing the screen. So how can regional integration contribute to development? Again, we're saying that it can increase trust among Africans, and it can enable us to sustainably address common environmental problems such as deforestation and pollution. It can increase our bargaining power vis-a-vis the rest of the world. It can create trade, and that is the main objective of the Continental Free Trade Area that was recently relaunched, I should say, and it can open otherwise closed or restricted market spaces on the continent for African producers and products. South Africa, for instance, just to mention that one, there are many others, but South Africa, for instance, is a market space that seems to be very restricted to producers or suppliers from other African countries, but unfortunately more open to producers and suppliers from outside Africa. It can attract investments. It can promote good governance, respect for human rights. You know, for instance, that the ECOWAS has been very, very keen on projecting itself as an organization that promotes good governance, respect for human rights and genuine constitutional transfers of political power, resolution of conflicts through mediation or conflict resolution. So this is what regional integration can do, which can enable us to develop, or which can contribute to development. If we look at the likelihood of peaceful resolution of conflicts, we would see, for instance, that between 2013 and 2015, looking at this illustration, for instance, that the number of mediation efforts on the continent by sub-regional organizations and the AU has been on the rise. And so without integration, what we are saying is that with this trend will not be there. It's another thing to actually question the successes of some of these mediation or most of these mediation efforts, but at least we actually see that integration is one thing that can actually enable us to address conflicts through mediation and conflict resolution, and by that reduce the amount of energy that is being sapped by these conflicts, and that needs to be focused on development on the continent. Now, we can then ask finally, where are we with mediation, conflict resolution, and regional integration in Africa? And here we can say that the capacity for mediation and conflict resolution on the continent still leaves much to be desired. Very few cases of successful mediation or conflict resolution by the African Union or sub-regional organizations such as ECOWAS and SADC have been recorded. The process of integration on the continent has, by most scholarly accounts, barely moved beyond a declaration of intentions. Recent efforts to establish the Continental Free Trade Area, for example, are yet to bear visible results in terms of impact on local businesses and the lives of ordinary Africans. Several reasons can be advanced to explain this performance, but these are not the subject of our discussion today. So in conclusion, we can say that mediation, conflict resolution, and regional integration are key in addressing the development crisis in Africa. These were clearly recognized in the early days of independence in Africa with the creation of the Organization of African Unity in 1963. The importance of these processes for African development can be said to have been not only re-echoed in the African Union Act and Agenda 2063 among other treaties and instruments, but have been emphasized, including by sub-regional bodies on the continent, such as ECOWAS. Efforts therefore need to be made to ensure that Africans and African governments develop and effectively exercise their capacity for mediation and conflict resolution. It is also necessary to find new and creative ways to advance the integration project that all states on the continent have formally declared interest in pursuing. So if it's not moved at the pace that we consider visible or that we consider satisfactory, it means that the methods that have been used, the ways of doing it so far have not been the best. And so I am suggesting new, but not just new, creative ways to advance the integration project on the continent that we have formally declared interest in. Would be very happy for the questions or that spur exchange from this presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Kewir. I think that has been very, very up to the point, very clear, and I would say quite introspective. I would want to make a very few some few summary on what you have been able to present, and then I would be able to open the space for question and answer session. Just to help us run through a bit, Professor has done this particular topic a good introspection, in the sense that by looking at it in terms of its concept, the mediation concept within the conflict resolution, in trying to quench the fires within the continent, probably looking at it from the point that in terms of conflict in this continent, for a long time, there was a way in which it looked at industrialization in the sense of trying to equate us to the other developing countries, developed countries, but looking at the concept of which mediation comes in, it is introducing the aspect of the third party in terms of conflict resolution. And so in this sense, the third party role plays a key role in trying to solve the conflicts in our continent. And looking at the mediation, and perhaps looking at scholars such as Paul Fryer, we have this aspect of focusing on people, putting people at the very center of development, as opposed to industrialization, and trying to raise that consciousness of bringing the immaterial, the non-material aspect or dimensions of development, which is somehow an alternative to ways in which the African continent could be able to look at development in that sense. So the rhetoric of challenging the African people, moving out from being victims and becoming the very agents of change, is reflected within the professor's discussion. And it helps us mostly looking at how we've been able to talk about the times of independence, crying so much in terms of being colonized, being enslaved, and running out of that particular narrative of being victims and victimhood. And so putting at the very center of our own field for us to take the mandate in terms of working towards development in our own continent. Looking at mediation itself and integration, that has come also very strongly from the professor's presentation, in the sense that it is able to bring a new dimension in which the continent can be able to work together as an integrated unit in such a way that it brings the contribution of minimizing the marginalizations that we see within our own continent. And we can even develop a whole topic about that in some other discussions in our series, so that in terms of mediation and integration, it has been able to introduce the aspects of inclusion, as opposed to abandoning a particular section within the community. Looking at that integration as well, it's been able to bring together national actors, bring people even from the very margins, and be able to work in such a way that programs can be put in place in the long term, rather than in short-term measures that would be able to solve conflicts in our continent. Professor also was able to highlight the aspect of confidence building. And that has been seen as different actors come together, integrated together, in the sense that they are able to have confidence to be able to address the issues that really befall us. Regional integration also has a sense in which it has been able to bring out the trust, and that really is very important when we're talking about the conflicts that we have in our continent. It has been able to give the African mandate to bargain. They have the bargaining power, and that contribution needs to be really emphasized when it comes to quenching the conflicts in our continent. But the professor is also trying to highlight our weakness in the sense that as much as we want to hail regional integration and mediation, we seem to be a little bit low. We are not doing quite well so far. There has been quite a number of declarations that are being made, but nothing goes beyond that, the declarations that are made in terms of the intent, what we want to do for our continent. So it seems like we need to work extra hard to go beyond the declarations that are made so that we are able to bring out the kind of development that would be realized and would be felt really within the lives of our own people. So the challenge still remains for us to be able to work as much as we want to build on the integration that are there in terms of ECOWAS, SADC, but how can we find ways in which we can go beyond the declarations of intent? You know, the way we come together and we say we want to do this, but how can we implement that so that it is really felt in the lives of our people? Prof, I really want to say that this has been very much to the point, very clear. And I would really appreciate that this has come just at the right time in our continent when we are struggling so much to be able to work together as a Pan-African movement, even at the ASFI. And so I'm sure that this is really what we really needed to hear. Thank you so much. I would move forward and be able to open up the space for questions. I would still encourage that those who have not been able to find time to type in the chat can be able to raise their hand, and we will be able to pick up the questions from there.
Yeah, if you don't have a question, if you have a question, please raise your hand. I will recognize you. Well, if no one is asking, I would like to ask Prof, given the aspect of integration, one thing that we pursue within the ASFI space is to encourage cross-border collaboration between and amongst African scientists, and so that people can come into this space and find common interest, work on it, and the interest that we promote. We promote our continent's development. Prof, using your examples you have given in your presentation, how is this integration pursued? Is it just at the political space, or scientists have impact of this aspect of integration? Is this something that is discussed in the scientific space, or just a political concern with regards to resolving conflict? Prof, I don't know if my question is clear enough for you.
Yes, I think if I understood very well, the question is whether the question of integration, the questions of integration, questions of mediation are reserved only as vehicles for development in Africa, are vehicles that are reserved only for politicians or for those that are active in the political scene. That's if I understood you very well.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think I would say that no, it's everybody's business, if I put it that way, to in the sense that integration affects us. We might not realize it, but it doesn't mean it doesn't affect us. As a Nigerian, as a Cameroonian, as a Kenyan, as a South African, as a Moroccan, an Algerian, if you are not directly benefiting from integration, if you're not directly benefiting from mediation efforts that your country might be involved in on the continent, you are at the very least benefiting indirectly. How? Now, or if you are not affected, if the government commits resources, for instance, to paying ECOWAS dues or paying African Union dues, because all countries have to pay some contributions, make some financial contributions, and not besides the direct ones, there are indirect financial and other resource contributions for the African Union to function, for ECOWAS to function, for SADC to function. Now, when the government is putting money in these organizations that could be used to develop water services in different communities in Nigeria or any other African country, and the integration that they're spending this money on is not moving forward, then it is affecting perhaps those who would have benefited from that money if it was put into some other use within the country negatively. Now, if the government signs up to a free trade agreement and this is implemented successfully, now a petty trader that has been harassed previously by customs or border police when they're trying to cross the border from somewhere in Akwa Ibom to somewhere in Cameroon, for instance, to sell their produce, would no longer see this happen, which means that the money they used to lose in practical terms on settling controls, if I use that word, I think maybe as Africans, a good number of us might understand what I'm talking about, would be plowed back into their business. And because of this unfettered access to the market that they were interested in, their business can grow. So that petty trader needs to be interested for this simple reason in integration. And one of the reasons why I think integration has not been advancing at a reasonable pace in Africa is because many think, including the people in the academia, think it is the business of politicians. How many universities are teaching regional integration, for instance? How many universities have master's programs in mediation? How many universities on the continent have master's programs, talk less of BSc programs in conflict resolution or regional integration? In a good number of cases, even some political science departments on the continent do not have regional integration as one of the different courses that they would actually deliver to their students. And so this explains why it is then almost left completely to the hands of the politicians who, by some accounts, just see it as an opportunity to actually make merry once in a year during summits with their counterparts from other places, and to feel and believe that they are actually presidents. So this is actually my take on this. It is everybody's business, or should be. It's something that's of interest to every African. And like I said earlier, development is about us as Africans believing that we can make that change that we desire, that we can do what is important, what is necessary to improve our lives.
All right, thank you very much, Prof, for that. So it means that as scientists, we have quite a lot to do to carry on this agenda.
Yeah, and Prof, let me add that we shouldn't imagine this as something that is very far off. Initiatives such as this, integration initiatives, it is not, we don't have to be waiting for some fantastic thing to happen. So this is a forum, this is a space through which people from different African that consider that revolve around science and improving science on the continent. Now, if these kinds of spaces, other individuals, organizations are actually carrying these kinds of initiatives, then it actually leads to what we call a regionalization, the development of a region. They move towards thinking that integration is something that politicians will say that it should happen. On the contrary, society actors and individuals are to exchange with that at some point it's an integrated space, and then follow the bandwagon and say, well, approaches to achieving integration. Either we take the regionalization sort of approach from the bottom up, or we take the regionalization approach from the top down. And in Africa, we seem to see clearly that the top-down approach has failed. Yes, the African Union exists, but in so many communities, abandoned communities in different in the countryside of many African countries, many people would not understand what you mean by African Union, by ECOWAS, because it did not come from them, but
Prof, we seem to be having another question.
Yeah.
On our chat. If you may allow, I may read it for you.
Yes, please. I think Prof has, let me see, looks like, oh, he's still here. All right. Yeah, go ahead, please.
I'm not sure if it's my side of the internet, but the Prof seems to be breaking quite often.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's my side only or what. It could be on the Prof side.
Yeah.
Okay. How much, I hope, Prof, you can hear me well.
Very well, thank you.
Okay. There's a question from Epiphan Awoko.
Yes.
How much more energy are we going to keep spending to quench conflicts in Africa? Is this not time for us to start advocating for strong policies at the continental level that will prevent conflicts in the first place? Prof, please. I don't think there's communication.
There's been a break, but I think I can answer. Awoku has put the question in the chat box, so I can address it directly. I did get most of it from what you said. Just a little bit when the line went. Dr. Misa, this is an interesting question. How much more energy are we going to keep spending to quench conflicts in Africa? Is this not time for us to start advocating for strong policies at the continental level that will prevent conflicts in the first place? I totally agree with this. We have a continental early warning system, and we also have at the regional level an early warning system for ECOWAS. We have early warning systems for virtually all the sub-regional schemes on the continent. These early warning, the objective of these early warning systems, including that of IGAD, referring to IGAD because we also know the situation that's online, are meant to actually prevent conflicts in Africa. So this is a concern that policymakers on the continent have been aware of. But in this discussion today, for me, when I reflected on it, what I thought was that perhaps we need to understand and focus on what's been missing from all the efforts at preventing conflicts in Africa, or all the efforts to fit it clearly within the theme that we have been discussing today, all the efforts at preventing these conflicts through mediation, because we do not only mediate conflicts that have escalated. We have to understand that conflicts are mediated. Most especially, mediation is needed when a conflict starts developing, when it's still even latent, when it's not yet to actually it's actually a conflict or to mediate or hurt. What I mean concretely is when a civil war starts or when a civil war is brewing, you have rumors of it. You have people grumbling about what's not happening. Now, if something is not done at that point, when there is rumors, when there are perceptions of the conflict, then it's going to continue to escalate until the grievances that people had initially, you have new grievances that build up. What are these kind of new grievances in the violent phase? It becomes these people have killed our own. But this is something that was not part of the equation. How do you forgive people and have raped and destroyed doing this. So prevention is very important. Mediation at that stage is really, really advised. Now, and when you talk about how much more energy, unfortunately, I would say that for as long as we do not put enough energy instead, why do I rather think we're not spending enough energy? Because, like I said, academic, I'm not saying no. What I mean is that most of the literature is still on African conflicts, on African regional integration. We are not exploring these topics. We are not
Prof, I'm not sure if it is on my side. I can't hear you.
Okay, I think Prof
yeah.
is out now. I think we can, given the challenges we're having. Prof, okay, perhaps you can round off because the line is really having some challenges, so that we can. But I see Dr. Minza, I see a hand. I see Nelson. Do you want to take that one, and then we can round off after that?
Yes, Nelson, if you could please speak, unmute yourself and speak.
Okay. Thank you for the lecture. I think it's very important. I have a question for the speaker. It's on my understanding, I see like as African scientists, we are working on answering questions related to the African problems. But it seems that we are not connected with the politicians. It means that our science that we do, maybe the politicians, they don't take this. Because it's like, as a scientist, we do the research, we find the results, but we are not the ones who have to define the policies. So I see like we are in the island, like we have politicians, they're trying to solve problems. We have scientists that are trying also to solve problems. So my question, how can we work together? What are the strategies so that the research that we do really can have impacts on improving the life of Africa? Or we can improve like African integration, conflict resolution. So how can we work together? Because for now, it seems for me that we are trying to solve certain problems, but we are not working together. We are in island. So I don't know if the speaker understood my question.
Professor Kewir, were you able to hear that? Professor?
I don't seem to see Prof here.
No.
All right. Is there anyone who can help us to look into this question? How can we work together, not in silos, between scientists and the politicians?
can we try to make this also a small discussion among us?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see Olufemi here. Olufemi, please unmute and then you can speak.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Olufemi, and I work with the University College Hospital, UI, also in Ibadan. And I just want to appreciate the speaker first. The Prof has really given some very instructive statements and lecture. But I want to say that we have quite a lot of researchers and scientists that are in government. And my own little interaction, each time we have this opportunity, this is an opportunity for us to let them know that there are quite a lot of studies that are actually ongoing, and that if only we have policy and strategic studies all over, I know in different parts of Africa. Now, these are areas to interface with the politicians. Sometimes it is the scientists. We notice that the scientists, the professors, are the one teaching these people. So these are areas where when we have the opportunity to interface with them, let them know that some of these challenges that they are going through, people have done some researches in it. Then let's put it into practice. Let's work it out and see whether it works. That's what is done in the developed world. That's why they vote quite a lot of resources, into their research. Now, but at this phase where people just do research and is kept on the shelf, and people see us as people who are just swallowing their fund and aid, they should ask questions. What are we doing with it? So I want to summarize by saying that when we have the opportunity to interface with politicians, let's know that we have quite a lot of work, especially those of us that are in government, those of us that were given political appointments. Let's make them to understand that we have opportunity to really help them out in some of the areas where they have challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Olufemi. That's a very interesting observation that happens in our institutions and our systems, the way we work. That interface is really required. Thank you so much. Do you have any other contribution? If we could have the other input. All right, we have, yes, we have one of us, Ajibola. If you could please unmute yourself, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And I also want to thank the speaker, but he's not here right now. And also, Oluwafemi, that really answered that question. I think the major problem is that, in Africa, we are not so focused on research, or we don't really see the importance in using the researches that we have conducted in advancing the continent. And we all know that most of our politicians have their own ways of doing things. Or let me say, the common saying about politicians is that, he's a politician, he knows how to do things. But, we also have to come to a place, and I don't really know what year or what time or when, our government, our politicians will come to realize that African cannot truly develop without, using all the researches that people are conducting, and they are putting to, and they are being put to use to make the African continent go forward. And if we can remember clearly, if most of us attended the ASFI, second year anniversary, we knew when Professor Timi Akonwu said that most of the developed countries right now, and he even stated clearly why China is now top of, is not top of, is not one of the world, power. It's because China has invested in research. So, like Oluwafemi said, maybe when the politicians really become aware that there is a lot of work in the researches that have been done, and then there can be proper synergies between research and utilizations of all those policies. Because normally when we do research, they're supposed to be converted into policies, and then they're supposed to develop the African continent. But how many of our politicians do this? How many of our politicians sit down and think that, okay, the researches that have been converted, that has been done, can they be converted into policies? But most times we use head knowledge, most times we use our own traditional ways of doing things. So I know that maybe with time, things will change. I know our politicians will come to realize that there is a lot of wealth, in the researches that have been conducted so far. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ajibola. That's a very good observation. And we hope that this change would be realized as we utilize the research that we do. Professor Bright, you have something to say?
Yes, I think what the point Ajibola and Olufemi raised are quite important. As scientists, being on the side we are, we may tend to think the problem is with the politicians. But if we actually look inwards as scientists, that there is a process in research. Why research becomes useful, there is a process involved in that, starting from conceptualizing a research question, to developing strategies to process that question, to analyzing what you have done, publishing it. For most scientists, and more so in the African continent, this process ends when you publish your paper in a journal. We shout, we are happy, we think, oh, we have done it. But actually, that is not the end product of the research work. Research being a tool for knowledge acquisition and then for societal development, publishing it in a journal or any other scientific forum serves a particular audience. It serves the scientist. But for it to be utilized by the society policymakers, there is another pathway that it is the role of the scientist to do that. Okay? For the policymakers to see that what you have done is important, there is another level of engagement. Ajibola used the word utilization. We have implementation. We have communication, science communication. So these are aspects that the scientists need to engage in, taking the findings from their research beyond the four walls of the scientific community, the university, to the society. And so you begin to identify audiences that should benefit from that research. And this is a complex scenario because the audiences now are, your message need to be tailored to the different audience. If you're speaking to the policymakers, it's different from when you're speaking to perhaps charities, or when you're speaking to maybe patient groups, for instance. So those skills that are needed to do that are things the scientists need to acquire. All right, you need to acquire those skills to make this engagement. ASFI, what we are doing and some of the things we are planning for next year is that, to begin to take African scientists beyond journal publication so that you can move from there to ensure that what you have found makes an entrance into the society. And so we have training that hopefully we'll bring up next year will be on science implementation or research implementation. And that will include these different aspects of communication, utilization, user engagement, and so on and so forth. That is one. The other aspect is that, science itself is a leadership call. It's a leadership call. But many times when we do science, particularly in our continent, people separate their scientific career from leadership. Leadership is for those people there. But being a scientist is actually a leadership role you are playing. And in that, there is a demand on your side to exhibit leadership. And that aspect of leadership also transcends what we do within the four walls of the university. And those walls we have built actually preventing us from achieving the ultimate goal of our scientific activities, to the extent that we can't go beyond. Once we come into university, we close the boundaries. This is where we feel comfortable. But really, to get this working, we need to go beyond that university four walls we have. And this is where leadership is required from African scientists. So in essence, I think that there is a huge role gap in our current engagement as scientists that we need to fill in. And I think the platform we have created here and the capacity building programs we have in the pipeline, we try to see how we can bridge those gaps and so that we can perform better than we are doing today. All right, thank you.
Yes, that will really be very helpful for us to make steps into this transformative agenda. Thank you so much, Professor Bright, and our speaker who is right now not with us, but we really appreciate for the time. We regret the breakdown in technology a bit, but Professor Bright, if you could allow.
Thank you.
Thank you. You are here. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that you've been able to help us look into this particular. Actually, this is a very heavy topic on our side, and we really appreciate that you have helped us to look at it from different perspectives. May I take this opportunity to perhaps allow that our convener, Professor Bright Nwaru, picks up the next session of this particular programming. Professor Bright, please.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Mensah, for the sterling moderation of this evening session. And thank you to our honorable speaker for this evening, Professor Kiven James Kewir, for still coming on board despite the technical challenges. Of course, the COVID realities we have faced has shown us that we can engage actively, positively using technology. But as we have seen this evening, and as you might have also experienced in different fora, at times we face the realities of what the technologies bring on board, and this evening is one example. So our deep apologies, but I hope that each of you must have picked one or two things from what we have discussed. The issue is that there is a fire that is burning across our continent. How do we engage in resolving and quenching them? And Professor Kewir has been able to highlight issues of mediation, issues of conflict resolution, and regional integration. I just want to close by, for those who are joining us for the first time, that if you have joined us, you would have known that the forum where you are here this evening is a place where we want to see how we can contribute our quota through science, knowing that no society develops without active participation of scientists. So we have seen the need for Africans, the hunger, and really the lack of capacity among African scientists, and seeing that we have set up ASFI, we call it a child of necessity, coming on board to see how we can support African scientists to build their capacity. And so the vision of ASFI, which is in full African Science Frontiers initiatives, is to raise the next generation of African scientists who have the right competencies to drive Africa's developmental and transformational agenda through innovative scientific research. That is our vision. And we have our mission to instill excellence, not just to do research, but doing research excellently in a way that contributes to Africa's developmental challenges and resolving them. And so we believe that only competent science can change our current narratives. We organize hands-on trainings, courses, like one of those I mentioned now we are bringing next year. We organize seminars and workshops like the one we are having this evening. We also have a robust mentoring program in which after the trainings we organize for each course, we establish a mentoring program in which young African scientists come to interact and to also learn from senior ones to grow better in science. In all of this we do, our goal is to support our continent. We also have research works we're engaging on. So far in the last 2 years I've operated, we have taught 8 5-day courses. These are full-time courses. Each course is about 8 hours a day, and we run it from Monday to Friday. And so far we have had more than 5,000 applicants to these courses, and we have trained, as at the last course we had, over 8,000 participants. And then these have come from more than 40 countries across the continent. We had our 2nd anniversary last month, and many of you were present there, which is a signal of what we're doing, and we have this evening. And I've mentioned next year we are looking to greater things than we have had this year. So please, if you have not filled the volunteer form, please volunteer for ASFI activities. The deadline is Friday this week, and then we will take that on board, and so that we all can contribute our quota scientists in pushing our continent in the right direction. And then finally, we have Dr. Warren's research tips and tricks. The 7th edition was last Friday, in which we looked at science and ignorance. How are they connected? The 8th edition will be coming the end of September, and that will be on scientific failures. What are scientific failures, and how do we deal with it? So please invite your colleagues, and we're happy to have you this evening. So please, thank you for joining us, and I wish you happy evening and blessed week ahead. Thank you, and you can, of course,
Thank you very much.
Unmute yourself as you leave and say hello.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye
you.
to
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and nice evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Prof. Yes.
Great to
Thank you,
meet
Prof.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Really great to meet you.
This Prof.
Dr. Ajibola, thank you, and everyone for the wonderful exchange.
Thank you.
Looking
Thank you,
forward
Prof.
to more
Thank you,
exchanges
Prof.
in the future. Thanks. Thanks.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you, Prof. See you.